Super Whovian is also available on Spotify. You are listening to a Whovian Comedy podcast. Coming up on this episode of Super Whovian, I'm joined by Australian YouTuber Hayden Bishop, aka Entertain House. We'll break down the positives and negatives of Shooty's first season, discuss our theories on Mrs. Flood, and talk about the potential spin-offs of the Whoniverse. My name is Liam, and this is Super Whovian. Coming on the show, man. Welcome to Super Whovian.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk all things Who. We've been doing it for like 7 or 8 years now, and now we get to do it on YouTube.
I love that you brought that up, because I was literally sitting there as we were discussing arranging for us to do this. I was literally sitting there like, when did we actually meet? Like when did we become mates? Because I was like, I can remember talking about Series 12 with you. I remember talking about Flux, but I don't remember talking about Series 11. So I was like sitting there the other day, like, when did I actually? Because we met through YouTube, but I'm like, I cannot remember when.
So for me, I feel like around that knock thin ice kind of time is where I started watching a lot of your videos.
Okay.
And I feel like we were both very kind of small back then as well.
Yeah.
Obviously now there's been a lot of growth between us both, but I feel like that time, then I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Doctor Who Series 10 Part 1. I won the Blu-ray giveaway as well. So that's how I watched those episodes.
I remember that now, yes. So it would have been Series 10.
It would have been Series 10. I wouldn't have known you, unfortunately, for Series 9. I might have watched your videos then, but didn't really reach out to you. But Series 10, so, we're going on about a 7-year friendship here. And
yes,
mate, I need to get over there, WA, to see you for sure.
Yeah, so when I actually say that we've met, like people listening, we haven't met. Like Hayden lives on the other side of Australia. Like we haven't actually met, but it would have been, it was Series 10, because I do remember now that I did a giveaway. I can't remember what video it was, but I was giving away the Series 10 Blu-ray. And I remember you won. That's right. Yes. Okay. That's a core memory for me.
We were very talkative on the whole what's in the vault. I made a YouTube video.
Yes.
Became it's still probably one of my most popular videos with about 8,000 views. And I remember we were theorizing about Series 10, who was in that vault. So that was one of our big talks.
I do remember now. Okay, cool. All right. That makes so much more sense now. Because I was like, I don't remember talking about Series 11 with you. I know we talked about Series 12 and Flux. But yeah, I don't. Because I can remember, for some reason, I remember this distinctively, was that for Resolution, obviously we had the trailer of the most dangerous DNA of the creature, or whatever the 13th Doctor said. And I can remember discussing with you, we were both so annoyed that we were like, if this isn't a Dalek, like we're gonna be like so angry. I can remember that. Don't know why that sticks in my head vividly, but it does.
No, I remember that.
Yeah. But anyway, let's jump into talking about some Doctor Who. Let's kick it off with you. So like, how did you originally get into the show, and like, who was your first Doctor, that kind of thing?
So for me, my first Doctor was David Tennant. I've now watched both Classic and New Who. I wouldn't say that I've watched all of Classic Who, but I've definitely watched the first few episodes, your Pyramids of Mars, your Meddling Monk, all those different things. But for me, probably about 2007, I still remember the first episode I watched was Voyage of the Damned. I don't think I watched it live from memory. I don't think it was around Christmas. Feel like it was probably earlier into the next year. The big thing for me that I remember is my auntie and cousins having a marathon with me, because on, I forget what channel, I think it was BBC One on Foxtel, they had the whole marathon of Series 4. So Series 4 was airing all episodes at that time. So that Series 3, Series 4 was kind of my first taste of Doctor Who. I can't remember watching anything before that. Maybe I did, but I remember me and Mum watching Voyage of the Damned. She was a fan of David Tennant. I was a fan of David Tennant. And then the big thing I remember as well is the news agencies had the magazine with 2 episodes in it as well. So I was buying the episodes week by week. So obviously starting off with, your Parting Your Ways, Bad Wolf, Your
Oh,
Rose,
yeah,
Unquiet.
I think it was like the DVD files or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I think it was the Doctor Who files, something like that. But I vividly remember getting the third series, Smith and Jones, which I actually just watched this afternoon in Shakespeare Code. I vividly remember getting the Unquiet Dead and watching that. I think the Unquiet Dead actually. I think I watched that during the dust storm. So when I was first watching the first couple episodes, is when here in Australia we had that massive dust storm, which would have been quite a long time ago now.
Okay. So then, do you have a favorite story from New Who and Classic Who? Like you just said, you only just started watching more of Classic Who. Do you have a favorite story in each era?
I mean, it's hard to judge Classic Who. Like I said, I have watched a lot of it, and it's a very different kind of thing. I think that Peter Davison was a very good doctor. I think he's probably the underrated doctor of that era. A lot of humor, likes his sport, things like that as well, similar to me. As for New Who, I really like. I love series 4, but it definitely has some dull moments, whereas series 3 does a fantastic job of the whole arc that slowly unravels itself as that series goes on. So for me, I think series 3 for New Who was the top tier kind of thing. And it's interesting to compare Russell and Moffat's storyline compared to Chibnall, because I still enjoyed Doctor Who, and we still spoke about Doctor Who during Chibnall era, but it definitely felt like it had regressed from what it was when I first started, 17 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And then you mentioned also like Pyramids of Mars. Had you seen that before Empire of Death and Legend of Ruby Sunday, or was that something that you kind of went back to watch over the last few weeks just because of the past finale?
No, I'd seen it in the past, probably maybe 8 years ago. I feel like I tried to watch more Classic Who during Jodie's first season and even the end of Capaldi's run. I really liked those, Doctor Falls, well enough in time, but I still thought there were some weaker moments from season 10 that wanted to make me watch some older Who. And I love some of the classic villains, even though there's some awful designs there for what they were back then. They're still so great. And it's a shame that some of them haven't been brought back, villains like Omega, and even just the interaction between multiple doctors, like the 3 doctors, the 5 doctors, those type of storylines were really, really cool. And then we obviously got to see that in 2007 with Davison and Tennant in the time crash.
Yeah. Okay. I like 100%. I don't know if you've watched like Pyramids of Mars is so good, and that whole like I'd say I think it's season 12. That whole season of that Pyramids of Mars is in is like probably my favorite Classic Who season. You've got Pyramids of Mars, Terror of the Zygons, The Seeds of Doom. Like that season, I'd 100% like not just you. I'd recommend anyone. It's so fun. It's just Four and Sarah Jane, just with these really like they go from the Zygons to like Sutek. Like it's such an awesome season, and the Brains of Morbius as well. Like I can't forget that one. That's such a good story.
I'm not sure if it is that episode that you just mentioned, but I do remember when I was younger, probably about 10, 11 years old. I absolutely loved, there was a Sontaran episode with Tom Baker, and I remember that was airing on TV, and I just really enjoyed it, even though it was, that classic Who vibe, and I'm this young kid, and it's not what people watch these days, but there was a Sontaran episode. I couldn't tell you the name, but yeah, it was really cool back in the day. That was my first kind of taste of Classic Who from memory.
Okay. Now I think you are the first guest I've had on since season one's finished. Pretty sure. So, yes or no, did you enjoy it?
You know what? I actually did. I do
Yeah.
think that it definitely had its moments of, good and bad.
Yeah.
But I think this was probably the best series, probably since season 10, I could argue. I think it was much better than the things we've seen during the Chibnall era. I think during Chibnall era, there's some episodes that really stand out for me. Demons of the Punjab was one. Off the top of my head, I can't remember titles that well, but there were some good ones. Whereas this season is, especially with the whole mystery side of it, you can just rewatch it and enjoy it. Even if there are elements that you don't like and you think the show goes in a direction it shouldn't, you can probably agree. A lot of people agree with that. But overall, it was a great return to Doctor Who, and Russell T Davies, even though, which we'll probably speak about later, the finale was a little bit, oh, very, not a little bit underwhelming. There were a lot of breadcrumbs throughout the series, especially with how prevalent TV series use social media these days. And Russell, I mean, he was love reacting a lot of my cheeky little comments on his Instagram. So to see that happening throughout the series was really, really cool. And this was a fun return to Doctor Who for me.
And you mentioned that Russell was like liking your comments. I loved that as well because I just know that he loved seeing fans theorizing in the comments of his photos because he would like so many comments that you're like, oh, maybe that's it. No, maybe that's it. But he must have been loving seeing how much we were getting into it as well, and like thinking, like seeing all the theories in his comments, and whether or not we were right. He was kind of, I don't want to say he was. No, I will say it, he was teasing us a lot. I think by liking the comments, but yeah. But throughout season 1 as well, like we kept in contact, I think pretty much after every episode, just to see whether we enjoyed it or not. And you would share a lot of your theories with me, and a lot of them were like really good. And when you would share them, because throughout the season, I don't think I really came up with any theories because there was so many questions. So I was very much like, kind of just, I don't know. I don't know if I was just going with the flow. I just couldn't like wrap my head around it all because it was just so much. But like a lot of the theories that you shared with me of yours were so good. Like they were really good. And you'd say them and I'd be like, oh yeah, he's got a point. Like, yeah. So like,
I mean,
for those listening, what were some of your theories about like Ruby's mum and the one who waits and things like that?
oh, I'm trying to remember now off the top of my head too well. I know that the one who waits, I referred to it first as the trickster. I think it was the
Yep.
trickster because we heard that kind of similar song in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and there was a storyline of Sarah Jane's Sky, who was meant to be the trickster's daughter that Russell never used. So that was one. I think the Susan Triad stuff started for me around episode 3. I actually didn't know that Susan Triad was confirmed to be a regular throughout the series, or the actress that plays her, Susan Twist. But when it got to season 3 and I'm watching Boom and I'm in Queensland on holidays and I'm like, hang on, haven't you been in a few
Yeah.
episodes? What's going on here? So that's where I started to theorize what was going on with that. And I said to you that I thought it was Susan. I thought it was the whole there's always a twist at the end. I actually think that was such a waste now, that whole there's always a twist at the end, because I thought, I'll speak about it more later, but I actually really enjoyed The Devil's Chord. I know a lot of people didn't. I thought it was a really good episode, and I thought it was top 3 for this series, but obviously really let down by that musical number unnecessary at the end. But I kept saying, I think they're leading up to a reveal that will make this all make sense. But that wasn't the case. So feels a little bit wasted for that Devil's Chord. But yeah, I had plenty of different theories. I had the Master's Gold Tooth is an interesting one, because in the finale, or the Legend of Ruby Sunday as well, you did see Kate hugging the Doctor, and she has red fingernails. So there's not many characters that we've seen with red fingernails. That's one that I'm still like, I think that's Kate, but why does she need it? So yeah, there's a few.
Yeah, definitely. And like you spoke before about the finale as well, and then the lead up to to how disappointing it was that Ruby's mum. Like I understand. I saw that people were defending it, and I'm honestly I'm glad that some people did enjoy it. For me, it didn't hit the mark because it just didn't seem like, I thought it was really well written and really well done when we actually got it. However, the actual reveal that she was just kind of, that Ruby's mum was just kind of no one, was so disappointing, because it was really teased to us that something special's going on, like something weird's going on here. Like there's still so many unanswered questions from that as well.
I mean, the whole snow thing, like
Yeah.
I've had countless arguments with people about how it was able to snow. And obviously I think now, unless they ever answer it in my head, I will believe that it was Sutek doing that. because of that whole element of I don't like this element of Sutek wanted to know who Ruby's mum was. I thought it was one of the worst plot holes in Doctor Who history, personally. So, and then you've got obviously all those different moments where we can imagine that Sutek's been on the TARDIS when Jax jumped on it, or Peter Capaldi sat on it, or Jodie sat on it. So yeah, I didn't like this finale at all, and I was very, very, very excited for it. I thought, and this is a big call, but I actually thought The Legend of Ruby Sunday was the best episode in about 7 or 8 years. I thought it was much better than anything in Chibnall. I know that there are a lot of YouTubers out there that didn't like it and nitpick the little things, but if you take all the little things out, it was an episode that didn't feel as forced as such. It built relationships with our characters, Kate, Ruby, that sort of thing. And then it had an amazing twist that, yes, some people were able to theorize, but I don't think a lot of people expected that. For me, I knew who it was when the Colonel Kadozi soldier died from sand. I said to my nan, that was sand. I know who this is. Oh my God, that was sand. But for a lot of people, obviously, you see a lot of reactors and they go, Sutek, who's that? And I understand that because there's not a lot of classic Who, but that reveal after 49 years, and I'm only 24, but that reveal after so long for people would have been pretty special. And then it led to a massive letdown. And I actually thought, and I hate to say it, I thought the dialogue was pretty good this series, but the finale dialogue was awful.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That finale, like part one, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, I agree, is one of the best episodes we've had in such like that's got number one spot of my episode, like my rankings of this episodes of season one.
Yep, I'd agree.
And the cliffhanger, like it was very much theorized that yes, Sutek's coming back. So I think some of my reactions are in my episode review on my channel, and I was still so shocked because I was like, holy shit, they're actually doing it. They've actually brought him back. Are you kidding me? There was an element of shock, but also I was like, Jesus Christ, all these like people sort of theorizing online, they're right. Like I thought it was beautifully done as well. And I would go as far as saying it's probably one of the best cliffhangers in Doctor Who ever for me. And I'm not a huge fan of the Chibnall era, but I thought that his cliffhanger was really, really good. And I think that this one was just like, as I said, it was theorized that Sutek was coming back. I was still so shocked, but also not. But I was like, I'd never been so excited for Doctor Who. Like, I can remember as soon as it finished, you messaged me as well that morning, and I had never been so excited for part two. In Doctor, I'd honestly say ever. I think, I'd go as far as saying that. Yeah,
I would slightly agree, but I think it was the best cliffhanger since Heaven Sent, and I think it's a good episode to compare to Heaven Sent because what followed was controversial. A lot of people enjoyed Hellbent, and then a lot of people thought this was rubbish. Same with Empire of Death. More people didn't like it, but there's still a number of people that liked it. So both of those different eras, Russell and Moffat, have done well is have a great cliffhanger, a great opening story, but they've missed the landing. However, there will be some very memorable elements and, some things that will probably be used in the future. That episode, both Hellbent and Empire of Death.
Yeah. And I agree with what you said of it just didn't stick the landing. Like, I think the first 10, 15 minutes of Empire of Death is brilliant. Like, seeing the sand consume London and seeing how, like, chaotic it is, I loved. Like, I loved seeing how much of a threat it was. And then for me, it very much kind of just went like that. And I was like, what is happening? Like, as I said, I love the first 10, 15 minutes. And then it just went downhill so quickly. Like, it just became, I don't want to, not boring, but it just, like, Sutek did nothing, like, after the first 10, 15 minutes. And for a villain that is, I would go as far as saying he's iconic for classic Doctor Who, but, like, with what you said, a lot of people probably wouldn't have recognized him. And I feel like if you're going to bring someone back like Sutek, Omega would have made a bit more sense. But if you're going to bring someone back like Sutek, you really have to You got to do something big with him. Like you have to make him huge. And I just feel like Russell didn't do that in part 2.
See, that's why I would disagree with people, but I think there's a lot of people watching or listening that will think, okay, well, you've just made my argument correct, and that's that this series was a failure. The reason people will probably say that, which I disagree with, is because Russell had this storyline and brought back that villain and teased in his specials all these things about this one who waits, who was obviously very confirmed as the one who waits. So don't think the one who waits is still out there. I've seen some theories out there, but you know, they, as you said, the words didn't stick the landing very well. You can argue that this series was a waste because, as you said, Sutek didn't do anything. But I thought there was some great moments from Sutek.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought, the whole turning of the TARDIS like it was a toy was really, really cool. Like how the Master shrunk people and used it as figurines and things like that. It was awesome to see. I've got it right here for you, actually. It was awesome to see Gabrielle Wolf return
Oh,
as his voice as well. But I think that's why a lot of people will put this series down to it was an absolute waste. Like I know some people that enjoy Classic Who and they think it was absolutely not needed, especially the way that it was hinted at and set up as well. But as I said, I think there's some really, really good elements in that finale. I even think the end sequence is pretty cool overall, but the way that it was executed was poor. And as I said, the dialogue was very disappointing from a lot of characters, and there was a lot of I'm a hater of Empire of Death. Sorry,
oh
the
yeah.
more
No,
I think about it.
I think I am as well. I think, yeah. Especially after like part 1 that, hyped up so many people. I think it was just not a good, like I remember watching the Empire of Death, seeing that they were getting to the point where they were defeating Sutek, and then sort of being like, oh, this episode's only been going for like 25 minutes. Like they've still got another like 20 minutes, 30 minutes to go. Like what's happening here? So I
Yeah.
feel like that definitely could have been fleshed out a lot more, of not just stopping Sutek, but like showing him sort of, I don't know, not taking control, but more being more of a chaotic threat. It just went too quick, in my opinion, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But one of the things that was very unanswered that we still don't have questions for is Mrs. Flood. So, especially after that final scene with her, do you have any theories on from throughout her appearances so far and in series 1? Do you have any theories for who she could be?
So, I mean, it's probably a popular theory, but I actually think that this could be the Rani. Now, we've said for years that the Rani, it's the Rani, it's the Rani. I've heard it everywhere. Now, I'm actually kind of sick in a way of the anagrams. It was cool at first, but I don't want them to be overused. Now, flood is obviously an anagram for rain. The Rani is a classic Who villain. I absolutely believe that she is some type of Time Lord. That dialogue in The Legend of Ruby Sunday with the Doctor saying that Time Lords hide themselves away, and then she's subtly, or not so subtly, putting the coat on the hanger and saying, "Always hiding myself away." So
Yeah,
there's a few different things. I think the Clara thing was a massive red herring. I think the whole clothing side of things, Russell's gone, let's make her look like Clara and use some words. So I do not think this is Clara, even though there probably are some versions scattered of her across time rather than her main variant. I don't think it's River Song. I know there's people that think
yeah,
it's River Song out there. I don't necessarily think it's a new character either. Now, with that, they are teasing from what I can hear without spoiling anything, the Pantheon of Gods kind of returning next series. And I don't necessarily think that she's part of it, but I could see that happening because I think they referenced a lot of different gods throughout the Legend of Ruby Sunday's ending. And maybe she's one of the gods that was referenced there. But I don't know. For me, I really do think that she's the Rani because for so long, the Rani's rights have been up in the air. The BBC didn't have the rights to them. I can tell you now that for about 2 years, they have the rights to the Rani. And I think that this is such an ongoing thing to excite fans to come back to a classic villain. But if they were to go down that path, and this is going to sound crazy, could they just out of nowhere change who she is? Could they have set up that she was the Rani all series and now in series 2 try and change that? The reason why is obviously all those reactions of Sutek. Who's that? What's going on? Who's that? They're probably going to get the same reaction to a Rani reveal for the most part. So that's why I think they did set her up to be the Rani, but I think we're going to get something else. And I don't know if I like that.
Yeah. One thing, like you mentioned before about the clothing, and one thing, like the first thing that popped into my head at the end of the Empire of Death was her on the rooftop with the umbrella, dressed very, very similar to Romana, which I thought, I don't think they have the balls to not to bring back Romana, but to recast her so easily.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Mary Tam has passed away, but I feel like I was like, no. So I don't think she's the Romana, but I definitely think she's a Time Lord of some sort for sure.
Do you think they're doing that side of things on purpose? That this is someone who is dressing up as people relating to the Doctor, and the audience isn't catching on to that? Do you think there's anyone else that she's kind of dressed as that has gone under the radar?
that was something I thought about, that maybe she's kind of mocking the Doctor, and like trying to, because she's only really had one interaction with the Doctor, which was her looking at him in the Church of Ruby Road as he went into the TARDIS, and that was it. And then of course we had like her saying, "Have you never seen a TARDIS before?" Which again, is very Time Lordish. But she's only really had one, like I call it an interaction. They looked at each other, and that was really it. So I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it could be her mocking the Doctor. Like I can very much see the Rani kind of dressing like that to mock the Doctor.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, as you said, like the people saying, "Oh, it's the Rani for every female character that's popped up in the last 5-6 years." It's been something that it's definitely been annoying, because you can't, like, you would give your opinion on that and they'd be like, "No, it's a Rani," and you're like, "Oh, sure, okay," and then it wasn't. So I can definitely see Russell bringing her back. But one thing that someone said on I saw a comment the other day of someone saying that, "Oh, well, she's probably just a new character, after the reveal of Ruby's mum being nothing, this is probably something else," which I can definitely see why people are a little bit not as invested in this mystery now after Empire of Death. Like they're kind of just convinced it's going to be a disappointing reveal. So what's your stance on that? Like, do you think this is something that people should still be really excited about?
I think that I'm really hopeful that there is a kind of payoff for it, but I can understand why people are disappointed. And I'm actually kind of in agreement with them, where my mind right now is, okay, I'm looking forward to Doctor Who again because I enjoy it, but I couldn't really care too much, especially right now that the series is over and we were promised a lot of answers that we didn't get. So I'm in a mindset of, I don't think we're going to get a reveal in the Christmas special. I don't think we're going to get a reveal in next season's opening episode. I think we might get a reveal at the end of next series, but I'm not someone who's going to go out there and make videos about who is Mrs. Flood all season, because it just seems like you do your head in too much with waiting. She seems to be the one who waits. It's us. The one who waits is us, waiting for Mrs. Flood to be revealed.
Yeah. There was filming photos of what looked like it was Shooty and the new companion, and then it looked like, I can't remember the other actor. I don't know if he was
Barada.
Yeah.
Oh
So
wait,
was
Barada.
the
Yeah.
companion, and there was someone else, and then there was Mrs. Flood, and this was a historic story. So I'll see if I can find those photos and I'll send them to you. But there was like I think the setting was like America, I think. But there was very much, they were all dressed in historic setting. It was set up to look like it was 1950s. It looked 1950s, 1960s. So I definitely think we're going to get some more answers of Mrs. Flood, because obviously this is a historic story. She's time traveling. Like she's there for some reason. So like Time Lord, perhaps, but yeah.
Yep.
We're going to have to wait and see. But in that sense, like we've already spoken a little bit about the negatives of the series, but let's talk about the positives and the negatives of season 1. So what's some things, we'll start off with the negatives and then end on a happy note. So what's some things that like obviously Empire of Death, what's some things you didn't enjoy about season 1?
One thing I really didn't enjoy, as I mentioned, the dialogue was the line about "I'll come back to see you, Ruby," because it wasn't Susan doesn't matter to me, but it was basically like I don't have a need to go and find my granddaughter, and I didn't really like that. It didn't sit well with me. It was not the Doctor's personality. I think the Doctor absolutely cares about family, friends, all that. So that was one thing that was a letdown. Obviously, that whole sequence at the end of Empire of Death as well looked really cool visually, but the more you think about it, it just seemed like a really easy reset button. I actually liked, I love Kate's character, but I really liked the death at the start. It felt like a really impactful moment. And then everyone started appearing to dust like it was Avengers Infinity War. And I'm like, this is very predictable. I know what's going to happen. We're going to hit the big reset button once again. I think one thing that was a negative, it's tough to say because I'm not against this, but some of the clothing choices for the Doctor were not fantastic. There were some really, really good ones. The main costume was great. I think it's the like orange with the brown kind of coat was fantastic. But there were a couple of times where I'm just like, this is really not how the Doctor would dress. But again, in different time periods, I respected that. Episodes like Rogue, that sort of thing with the hair. I've got kind of my rankings as well from worst to best for the series. I don't know what everyone's hype about Boom is. I'm gonna say it. I know everyone loved Boom. I've got that episode as what a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 for me out of the 9, was it?
Okay.
So yeah, I wasn't massive on Boom. I thought it was a nice story, but we had a lot of Doctor lightness this series, and the Doctor needed to be doing more. It was cool to see that concept of a landmine, but what I want to see is the Doctor doing more.
Especially for his first series as well. Like that's very risky
Yeah.
having not a lot of the Doctor. But I agree with the costumes. Like I've always loved the fact when the Doctor dresses up as well. When he goes back in time, like I just love it. We've had Peter Capaldi do it. Tennant, I don't think did it at all or very much. Matt Smith, obviously, we had his purple coat in the snowman and stuff like that. I think he did it
Did
every now and
Tennant do it in Human Nature?
or technically yes, because he was like human.
Yeah, yeah.
Then we've seen him in like the tux for like the Lazarus experiment, things like that. But I've always loved the Doctor dressing up to fit the time period, so he kind of tries to blend in as well. But the fact that I agree with, like his outfits, I thought some of them were really good. It just didn't suit the Doctor. And like you mentioned, his brown coat and his orange shirt, I loved that outfit because it suited him. It looked really good on Shooty, and I feel like it's definitely a negative for me as well because, and people say no, this is not true at all, but it makes it hard for cosplayers, and it does. Like you're gonna wear what you're gonna dress up in his outfit from Boom, and people will people recognize who you're cosplaying as? Like I can't see that happening. So
Yeah.
I personally think it makes it hard for cosplayers to not stick to one outfit, but to kind of be recognizable as the character they're going for. But so I honestly I wish that his brown coat and orange shirt would be the one.
One other big negative that I had, which is being very nitpicky, but I thought maybe in the finale it might have been explained, was the way that the TARDIS was mysteriously already at its destination. Doctor Who has always done a fantastic job of, showing the time vortex or showing it landing, the lights, the sounds, all those sort of things. But in a lot of these episodes, the Doctor and Ruby just were kind of already on a planet and the TARDIS was over there. In Wild Blue Yonder, it was obviously crashing, and I thought that played into the theory that someone was controlling the TARDIS. I said that to you
Yes.
around the start of the series. I said, during the specials, the TARDIS has not landed properly. It's made that groaning noise. Someone's controlling it, which I was half right, but half wrong. There was someone on it, but they weren't controlling it as such. So that for me, I kept saying that was one thing I didn't like throughout the series, that we were mysteriously there, jumped into it, it would have been better to see, you know, them walk out of the TARDIS for at least one episode this series, which I know they did in The Legend of Ruby Sunday, which is why I like that episode as well.
Yeah. And there was also I've added this onto my list of negatives that I read the other day. Russell T Davies cut out a whole chunk of the start of The Legend of Ruby Sunday. And apparently there was a scene in the script, they'd never filmed it apparently. And there was a scene where the Doctor and Ruby explored 3 different places and saw Susan Twist 3 different variants of her. And this was in the script, and that kind of led to them going to unit to try and figure out what's happening. And I'm trying to remember because it was said, this was in Doctor Who magazine as well. Like this wasn't just someone rambling on Twitter. She was on a planet surrounded by giant ants, which I thought, oh, that could have been really cool because they could have brought back the Zabi from the first Doctor's era. There was something about a space station or something in the future of Earth. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I'll have to try and find it. But there was 3 different variants that they went and encountered, and this was apparently in the script for The Legend of Ruby Sunday, and Russell cut it completely, which immediately, as soon as I heard that, I put that on my list of like negatives of this series, because I thought that would have been like the best way to open up that, because as you said, we never really saw them land. We did in that episode, I guess, but it kind of felt abrupt from going from Rogue just to them showing up at unit. Like, why didn't they go to unit, a little bit earlier?
This is part of the reason, and there's a lot of reasons for it, that I love the Devil's Cord. That whole scene where Ruby is showing the future, which is very Pyramid of Mars-esque as well. Callbacks there, seeing the TARDIS land, that desolate land, and seeing, the TARDIS in the background as well. So I could speak about that episode all day. I think it was one of the really strong points of the series, and I think it didn't deserve as much hate as it gets.
Yeah, definitely. And what about positives for the series? Let's end this part of the conversation on a happy note.
Okay, well, let's go through my top 3 episodes, and I'll go through kind of why those were positive. So number 1 was The Legend of Ruby Sunday. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. I still think there was a couple moments that were, cringe, to say the least, but still a very, very good episode. Number 2, we spoke about that Dr. Light sort of thing, but I thought 73 yards really, really worked. Yeah. I think it worked even better now. I actually think I like Empire of Death more because of 73 yards. There were elements of that episode that obviously were used in Empire of Death, and even I think we'll never get an answer to this whole strange things happen at 73 yards. I really, really liked that element in the finale, that callback to the woman and the whatever it's called, the circle that was broken. So that was a really, really strong episode, and I think not a lot of people would have worked out what was happening at the end there. And then I've mentioned it all episode. The Devil's Cord. I thought the Devil's Cord was fantastic. I thought the element of no sound scene was one of the best scenes in Doctor Who history, where the Maestro's going around. I thought the Maestro, the villain, was really, really cool. I know Jinx Monsoon is very important as an actress by a lot of people, and well respected. So I was looking forward to her having a chance to play, I think an iconic villain. I think she'll be remembered for a long time. Obviously, the song at the end probably takes away a point, but I think it's still definitely an 8.5, if not even a 9 episode. I think the more I think about it, I could put the Devil's Cord at second and 73 yards at third, but I'll leave it as is just because of that number. But that's where you started to see the recurring Susan. You didn't notice it, but you saw Susan Twist. You had the Ruby Sunday mystery starting to open up more and more. The Beatles with some comedy. I know a lot of people found it cringe, but I thought it was pretty funny. Me and Nam were laughing at all the the songs that they were singing while they shouldn't. I thought Devil's Cord was really good, but as we're speaking about positives and as we're speaking about episodes, making me think of one more negative for this series.
Go.
Now, the reason why, and I'm looking at the episodes, it's the lack of writing by other writers. Now, Russell T Davies basically wrote this whole series. There was a Loki writer for Rogue, which I enjoyed. I put that at 4th. And then Stephen Moffat returned for Boom. Besides that, in a shorter series, Russell T Davies wrote the whole thing. And I feel like Doctor Who has really succeeded off other writers. Your Neil Gaiman, Jamie Matheson, trying to think of names off the top of my head, Rachel Talalay, those type of writers. So that's one negative for the series, that it needed to have writing from others besides Russell. And I think, if I'm not wrong, Russell wrote Dot and Bubble, which is an episode that I didn't really enjoy. I thought it had a really good ending, some good sci-fi elements. I know people think that episode felt like Black Mirror. I'm sorry, for me, 73 yards felt like Black Mirror, and I love Black Mirror.
Yeah, I feel like Dot and Bubble, I think, is probably is towards the bottom of my list as well. I think the only thing that I enjoyed about it was I thought the slugs were awesome aliens. I thought they were a waste of such a cool looking creature. And then Shooty's performance at the end. But 73 yards felt like, I don't know if you've ever watched The Twilight Zone. It felt like The Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone is one of those things, an anthology series where it's weird, it's wacky, and it's never explained. And I loved that with 73 yards as well, because I was very much like, damn, this is the Twilight Zone, and it's done really well. So I definitely agree with the different writers are needed. Like, a lot of my favorite stories from Russell's first run as showrunner are from different writers. Like, like, I love his stories. And don't get me wrong, I love his stories. But he made some really great stories with the 10th and 9th Doctors.
Mark Gatiss, that's another name that wrote some great stories.
Yeah, definitely. And then one of the, I think probably the biggest highlight, I'd say, for me in this season was just Shooty and Millie together. Like, I thought their chemistry was fantastic. And, you know, throughout New Who, we have had really great combinations, and the Doctor and the companions have worked really well together. But I feel like these two really reminded me of the Ninth Doctor and Rose. It just felt like that best friend pairing again, and I thought they worked really well. But what did you think of their chemistry?
I thought their chemistry was great. One negative sort of thing I have about Shooty, and I like him as a Doctor, especially in his first series. I think he's done really, really well, even though he was kind of sidetracked a bit from a lot of the things. I know a lot of people will come at me for this, and I know that, you know, mental health and things is such an important issue, so it's okay to let out your emotions. But the Doctor didn't need to cry in every episode. However, that scene in Empire of Death was fantastic, with him screaming out of the TARDIS, letting out his anger. If we saw maybe one cry when Ruby dies in Boom, and then saw that, this series would be remembered for the emotion. But instead, as you have started to pick up from, there's people online just saying, why did he cry in every episode? And I do kind of agree with that. Didn't mind the nicknamey sort of stuff, the babes, all that sort of stuff. But the crying for me just didn't feel Doctor Who-y.
Oh, I could not agree more. And there's definitely people that's going to say it's all right to cry. And yeah, 100% it's all right to cry. And I'm glad that we did get to see that side of not just his Doctor, but the Doctor in general. But it happened. And I feel like I'm trying to defend myself, and I feel like I'm being a hypocrite here. But I'm also a men's mental health advocate. Like, I'm very much, not just for men, like mental health in general. Like, go for it, speak about it, cry if you have to. But he cried every single episode, and it just, I don't know. I think it was probably the fifth or sixth episode he started crying, and I was kind of like, okay, really, like, what do you like? It became annoying, and like you said, it very much would have been more impactful if he didn't cry every episode, and we saw that, like, that scene in Empire of Death, as you explained, was him screaming in the TARDIS. That would have made me, I think it would have made me very emotional.
Yeah,
for sure. But then also Russ was now talking about creating this whole new universe for Doctor Who. And I remember months ago, before the series even started, he wanted to do his own sort of Marvel universe for Doctor Who. And that's like with the spin-offs and things like that. And I don't know if you or anyone listening is familiar with the huge rumor of the spin-off that's happening, starting to film in September with the Sea Devils.
So I'm hearing rumors, correct me if I'm wrong, but I watched Smith and Jones today, and I've always been a fan of Martha, but
I was about to bring this up. Yep.
I thought she was one of the weaker companions. Still fantastic nonetheless. But I was like, okay, we haven't seen her in a long time. This could be cool. I'm not someone who loves spin-offs. I think there are some good ones. I think, you know, The Mandalorian, for example, for Star Wars is great. Some of the Disney Plus show spin-offs are just terrible. So this will be a really interesting thing to see because spin-offs for me are kind of hit and miss. And
Yeah.
I mean, Doctor Who's had its fair share. Torchwood was great. I actually enjoyed Class. I know a lot of people didn't. Maybe if I rewatch it these days, maybe I didn't because that was, what, 10 years ago? I was just a kid fiending off sci-fi back then. But yeah, this will be interesting to see the Sea Devils that haven't really worked in New Who, especially. They haven't been great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit intrigued.
So for those who don't know, I saw the rumor yesterday, I think it was that it's going to be a 5-part series called The War Between the Land and the Sea, between Sea Devils and humans. And the huge rumor at the moment is that Martha's going to be leading it. And then also I saw something that Russell T Davies said the other day that he really wants to work with Eve Miles, who played Gwen Cooper again. So now people are like, oh, she's going to be in it too. And I agree with the spin-offs. Like it is difficult, especially like because he wants to make his own Marvel universe. Going back to Marvel, their spin-offs like haven't been great. Like it's been very hit and miss. You've had like the Secret Invasion and Winter Soldier and the Falcon and things like that. So
She-Hulk.
I feel like and She-Hulk. Don't worry. Oh god, yeah. I feel like Doctor Who is, like I said, I think this one I read that it's going to be a 5-part series. So I guess that's easing us in to this universe that he wants to set up. But it's also because obviously we've now got Disney Plus not funding the show, but giving a lot of money to the show. It's one of those things that I think Russell, especially, if he wants to create this universe with so many spin-off shows, he needs to do it very, very carefully.
Well, that's the thing. If this series succeeds, I don't want Russell to go, great, that was a success. We've got 4 or more ideas to do in the next 12 months. We're making this like Marvel. I would prefer to see quality over quantity and some storylines fleshed out. I think, there's some great mysteries in Doctor Who, even like Jenny, the Doctor's daughter, things like that have been rumored for years. Maybe they're best left unsolved, but just maybe Russell could write, some spin-offs that we can enjoy, but they can't be rushed and fleshed out very quickly, I think.
Yeah. So if you were in charge of like the spin-offs, if you could like commission maybe 3, which ones, what would you pick to have like as this setup of this Doctor Who universe?
See, if you have a spin-off, does that mean that that monster can never come back to Doctor Who? Because that's kind of that's the hard part for me. Like, you wouldn't put your Daleks, your Cybermen in.
That's a very good point.
Because
like if you're doing a spin-off of the Sea Devils, you're going to get sick of them if they're going to bring them back into the main show. Like that's a very good point.
I think that I don't think with a Shielder, but I think a Clara spin-off would work.
Okay.
I think the fact that she has her own kind of TARDIS, and maybe this is going to sound complex, but technically she's preserved in that moment dead. Maybe when she travels with her TARDIS places, they necessarily can see her as, I don't know, a ghost or know that she's dead, but she's still able to do doctory things. So a Clara spin-off, and I think Clara was a great companion, could really, really work. As for a villain one, I don't think, the Master, the Daleks, the Cybermen could be used as a spin-off. So this is a really hard one to be put on the spot.
With the spin-offs, one of the big things that people are asking for is a unit spin-off with this, with this building of the unit team. So would that be something that you would like commission if you were picking the spin-off shows?
I'm going to say no. Now, I'm going to say no. I think that Unit is a fantastic Doctor Who concept that's been around a long time, and there's a lot that will be done with Unit in the future. I think a spin-off for Unit is coming. I do. They have been building it throughout the series, so I think it's inevitable. But if I was commissioning it, I'd be saying, look, this could be overused. If we do a Unit spin-off, we can't bring Unit back now for at least 6 series or 6 years, something like that. As you said, it would get repetitive. I know they've had breadcrumbs for it with Rose, Donna, Susan Triad, which I don't understand. I'm not a big fan of that one.
Yeah. Okay. So
Um,
in Ncuti's second season, then what what like we've obviously got the mystery of Mrs. Flood, and Ncuti's very vocal about the Daleks. Like he really wants to face off against the Daleks. He
yep.
said that in multiple interviews now. So what would you like to see in his second series?
I want the Daleks. I want the
Yeah.
Daleks back. I know everyone says I'm sick of them. I'm sick of them because they haven't been a threat. They haven't had Russell's writing. Now, I personally don't think there has been a good Dalek story since The Magician's Apprentice. I think that whole story with Davros was fantastic. Davros is probably due a return as well, mind you, but Russell obviously never wants to put him in a wheelchair again. So that's really interesting. I don't want a human Davros in the show. I think it would be really, really controversial. I'd love to see the monsters do more. I think this series monsters were fantastic. I actually really like the monsters in Rogue. The bird people were really, really cool. They seemed like a threat. They wanted to take over London, take over the world. They weren't just, as you said, you like the slugs, the man eaters, the slugs, but didn't really do anything as a monster throughout that. Great design, but didn't really do anything. So I mentioned the Maestro, who was great. So I would like to see the villains get a little bit more screen time and be a little bit more fleshed out, sometimes with the backstory. It's really cool in Doctor Who when, a monster reveals where they're from. I mean, small example, I was watching earlier Smith and Jones and the Plasmavore speaking about where it's from and all that stuff and how the princess deserved it and that's why. So that's what I want to see. I want to see you care more about the villains because as we've said, we love Shooty, we love Millie, we love Kate from this series, but we're not really talking about the villains. And Doctor Who is so iconic for Weeping Angels, Cybermen, Ood, Sontaran, fleshing out those type of villains. So that's what I want to see. And obviously, Shooty doing more next series is an absolute must. I think that we need to keep the Screwdriver and TARDIS the way it is. The updating of a TARDIS screwdriver every season is very repetitive. I'm hoping Russell doesn't go down that path, but I am excited to see series 2/15, whatever it is at the moment.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So let's jump into the final segment of the episode. Now, I gave you a heads up about this, as I do for every guest. Basically, I give you the question: What if you were the showrunner of Doctor Who? So, as showrunner, who would you cast as your Doctor, your companion, and your Master?
I had a long, hard think about this one, and some of my favorite actors out there are American, which made it really tough because I think you have to have that UK element for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It's such a thing. So, some of my favorite actors that I would love to mention is like your Morgan Freeman, your Liam Neeson, but I'm going to be more realistic here. These are still some very A-listers, but I'm going to go with a bit of a combination that I think would work. And I have done something that I'm not sure if your guests have done previously, but I have picked a male and female companion for you as well.
Okay.
So, starting off with the Doctor. With the Doctor, I think someone who gives off some interesting kind of mysterious vibe, can rock glasses potentially if we need to see that David Tennant kind of thing. I feel like we need to see a younger Doctor. I feel like that David Tennant era was so pivotal. So I'm going to go with someone who has been part of technically the Harry Potter universe, but not a Harry Potter cast member. So my new Doctor is Eddie Redmayne. I think that
Oh, I like that.
Eddie Redmayne can get angry in some big moments and can really lift as an actor. So Eddie Redmayne is my pick for the next Doctor.
Oh, I do like that. That is such a good choice.
My companion is also part of Harry Potter. This is the last part of Harry Potter for you. This was really tough. I wanted to try and go with someone, I wanted to try and go with people that I thought Doctor Who potentially could get. So that's why I didn't go with your big name A-listers, but someone who I think could pull off the role and has a bit of comedy, but could also do some important things, that chemistry. I'm going to go Rupert Grint. I'm going to go Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter series. I think as he's grown up more and more, he could evolve into a really good Doctor Who actor. So Rupert Grint
Yeah.
as the male companion. Female companion, I feel like other people will say this one. I'm probably, going with someone who would be very, very hard to get, but I think she'd be a fantastic companion. I think she's been fantastic in her films as well as her main TV series as Daenerys. Emilia Clarke, for mine, is joining the TARDIS with Rupert Grint. And obviously, the Master is really interesting because, a villainous character hasn't really been a young Master. And I think an older Master kind of works for the series. This would be extremely hard to get. And I don't think he is English, but I would love to see Patrick Stewart, Professor X.
Ooh, okay.
So I think a bald master, an older kind of master, very Time Lordy vibe, could be really, really cool.
Yeah, okay. I could definitely see that. That's awesome. Very good choices. I like that, especially the Doctor. I always wanted, especially like when everyone was theorizing a few years ago about who should play the Doctor. Eddie was like one of the top 5 on my list. Like I thought he would have been so good.
I just remember the gentleman from, I think it's Death in Paradise,
Yeah.
was
Chris Marshall as
before
well. Yeah.
Chris Marshall. Chris Marshall always gets theorized before Capaldi, before Jodie, that sort of thing. So yeah, those are my picks.
Definitely good choices. Well, Hayden, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. It's been amazing basically breaking down this series with you. Um, online, you are a content creator. You've mentioned that a few times throughout this episode. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so over on YouTube, Entertain House, I am going to start trying to post some Doctor Who content. It won't be as regular as it used to be. I used to do reactions, that sort of thing. Now it's a lot of sports content, NRL, Parramatta Eels, those sort of vlogs, tipping videos. I can probably win you some money. I'm pretty good at tipping and all that sort of stuff. Also on Instagram at the Entertain House, and I do have TikTok, Entertain YT.
Beautiful. Well, all of Hayden's links will be in the description on Spotify and on YouTube, so you guys can go and check it out, especially if you are an NRL fan here in Australia. He does some really great content in that sort of sense as well. But again, Hayden, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you sit and chat with Doctor Who with me.
Mate, it's been fantastic after all these years of talking online and seeing each other in the flesh. As I said, got to get over there to WA. They've got to bring NRL over to WA to that Optus Stadium. I know they've done it a couple of times, so that would be really, really cool. But yeah, really appreciative, and I'll get back to watching Series 3. I think we're up to the Shakespeare Code.
Okay, very controversial episode that one is. Very good. Okay. Again, thanks for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this, make sure you do rate on Spotify and like and subscribe on YouTube. And I'll see you in the next episode. Hayden, thanks, man.
Thank you.